Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sharmit podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce a very special guest, Ben Miller, who is joining us all the way from United States. Ben is a Microsoft MVP and a Microsoft certified master, and a highly respected expert in database technologies. With decades of experience in IT and development, Ben has become a leading authority in SQL Server, specializing in areas like high availability, large scale database management, and PowerShell automation. So, today we will dive into Ben's journey, explore the evolution of SQL Server, and gain his insight into managing large scale databases and implementing high availability solutions. But before we dive in, I would like to thank Ben for joining us today in this episode. And now, Ben, I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us something about yourself.
Um, I've had quite a journey in my career. Been in it for a while, so I love technology. I can't get enough of it, and I don't find enough time to get away or to do hobby stuff. But I do have some hobbies. But I began my career way back in the '90s, and ended up at Microsoft for 7 years, and just had a great career. And I'm still got plenty of time to have some more fun.
Okay, so we just wanted to know more about your journey because it sounds very interesting. Being a Microsoft MVP or a IT leader, you have contributed a lot for this community. So let's start at the beginning itself because everyone has a story, right? So can you share a bit about your journey into the world of SQL Server and the database technologies?
Yeah, so I began actually in high school when computers were new, and I loved technology enough that I took a data processing class, and they had brand new 8088 computers, and I thought, wow, that would be so fun. The teacher didn't have any idea about computers, so she decided to let me be the teacher, and she was going to be my aide. And I
Okay.
taught the class on data processing and 8088 computers and word processors, and it was super fun. I left high school and couldn't still get enough of computers. So I began doing some C and C++ back when there wasn't a Visual Studio. It was
Okay.
just command line compile and all the things. And I learned to love writing code and more automation stuff. I didn't write a whole lot of apps, but I wrote some apps that were really super fun. I found out I really didn't want to support software for my career. So I changed and went to doing networks and became a certified netware engineer, and netware's way back in the past, and got to love networks. So I spent many years doing networks and putting computers together, servers, and then I was introduced to SQL. And right at the end of the '90s, before the big Y2K, I did some SQL stuff, and I had found heaven. It was wonderful. I loved SQL, did some ASP, and then I went to Microsoft and spent 7 years in SQL support and in the MVP communities to learn all the smart people and learn from them. I began to post in forums and wanted to help people out. And I learned so much, and that made me who I am today. So after Microsoft at 7 years, I left there and started my own business and kind of did that part time, but worked at many companies with larger databases and lots of data. And then I just learned to continue to love data and did high availability and learned automation in there with SMO and PowerShell. And so I did a lot more database stuff in my career than I have the other stuff. But the benefit of that was that I was able to talk to developers,
Mhm.
understood what they were going through, what they did, how they connected to SQL. And I was also able to talk to network people. So I was able to design networks in the SQL realm with high availability because you need a little bit of networking and understanding of how clustering works. So I went a route of doing all this sorts of stuff on my own. I didn't have a degree at that point, and
Okay.
I just kept on going, just kept on learning and learning. And that is what I found to be the fun, is to learn every day. And so, yeah, my journey has been a long one, but I will tell you, it's been a great thing to be able to help people. I decided I was going to give back when I left Microsoft, I continued to post in forums and do speaking at SQL Saturdays. And I gave back because I was helped by so many smart people in the MVP realm and in the community that I just had to give back. So that's what I spend my life doing now, is trying to give back and doing everything I can. So it's super fun. Great journey for me.
Okay. And you know what? With so far discussion, it's quite clear that since your early days, you are a leader, whether it's about teaching your classmates about the programming or leading the businesses. Throughout your journey, you played a role of a great leader. So that sounds very interesting. Okay, so let's talk a bit about your expertise, because Ben, one thing that really stands out about your career is a unique blend of IT and development experience. So, what do you think? Like, how has this combination shaped your approach to database administration and problem solving?
Yeah, I mean, when I began to learn to develop, you had to solve problems. And so my job was to get more done with less time. I used to work inside a prison with a company that used inmate labor. And I didn't want to stay there. I mean, we got there 6:30 in the morning, and I just wanted to leave. So I
Okay.
learned automation fast. And so that I could leave the prison and go home, just so I didn't have to be in there. And that tailored everything. It taught me how to problem solve, how to manage data, because we were using a 4GL system for data. Since databases were kind of not new, but new enough for me, the companies would buy them. So it was all 4th-generation language. But it was really fun, and helped me learn how to troubleshoot. Troubleshooting is probably the most important thing I learned from that, is how to fix bugs or how to fix things that didn't work. So yeah, troubleshooting is probably what I got the most out of it.
Troubleshooting, yeah. Because nowadays, when developers started their career into IT industry, they think that troubleshooting or debugging is a bit complex thing for them. But in, like you just mentioned, that these are the things that help us to learn more about the process and the business logic. So this is what
Mm-hmm.
makes us helps us a lot. Okay. And Ben, like you have been in the SQL Server space for a long time and have seen it evolve dramatically. So, what do you think as a SQL Server MVP and Microsoft certified master? What are some of the most common significant changes you have seen in SQL Server over the years, from SQL Server 2000 to SQL Server 2019 and the latest version? So, what changes you have witnessed so far?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of T-SQL changes,
Mm-hmm.
no doubt, between SQL 2000 and now. I don't know that there's particular ones. The biggest category for me for T-SQL is the windowing functions, where you have row number and you have alt ranking and stuff like that. Some of them have been around for a while, like rank and dense rank, but the windowing functions like row number, with all of the options you have in the Windows functions, that's really, I think that's been a really big thing to get data out in a certain way. That's
Okay.
been really helpful for people. The other one is engine. I mean, the engine in SQL 2000, when I supported it back at Microsoft, it was okay. Schemas weren't really a thing. They were kind of a 4-part name part, but you really couldn't grant a permission on a schema. In 2005, they changed that, and that was huge, to be able to create a schema and actually authorize people to get there and keep people out of that schema, so you can kind of segment your applications. But really, the engine has been the biggest change. The engine was okay back then, and then we had the new cardinality estimator in SQL 2014, and everything has just started to change. The database scoped options and the engine behind the scenes, where it has intelligent query processing in SQL 2022, you just can't get a better way to have the engine use things. And the biggest feature for me that has been super helpful lately is Query Store. That's
Okay.
been a big innovation to allow availability groups to use things on the secondary. Availability groups loves to scale out, and Query Store just is such a piece of work that the intelligent query processing and all the things that the engine does with Query Store, I think, have been phenomenal.
Okay. And let's say, Ben, if someone is there who wanted to start as a DBA or as a database developer, so what few piece of advice would you like to give to them? What are the proper roadmap for them to start their career with the databases?
To me, the first one would be spend time in the community. Go look
Okay.
at the answers on Microsoft.com. Go look at Expert Exchange. Go look at these forums that people post questions about SQL and learn what some of the problems are.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I started. And then you get the developer edition, you start playing around. That's the biggest thing, is have your hands on it. If you don't have your hands on it, you can learn a lot of things by books. I mean, I lived in the SQL Server internals books, and I learned a lot
Okay.
about the engine and how they worked under the covers. And I mean, it's really good. But I would say get in the community and get a friend or mentor. Like, get somebody who you can bounce things off of, someone who you trust, and then just get out there. Just learn every day. Learn something. There's so many resources out there that have free resources, and even inexpensive resources, $12,
Yeah.
Pluralsight. There's all sorts of places that you can learn. Just take up the hobby of learning and being a friend and community member. Those are the three pieces. They don't really teach database administration in college, so it's not really that helpful to think that that's where you're going to get all your information. But the community and the people are where you're going to learn the most. That's a great
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, I'm also agree with this point because when we interact with the like-minded people in a community, then there are lots of opportunities. We can interact with each other, we can learn from each other. And in fact, like there, when we are working in a group, then it is bit easier for us to achieve a task, whether you are providing any solution or figuring out any mechanism to solve the issue. So it would help a lot if we are working with a team. So yeah,
Yep.
this is one of the best thing that anyone can refer in if they are starting their career into IT industry. Okay. And one more thing, Ben, like whenever we are having a discussion regarding database, so it's quite clear that managing large database is no small feat, right? And you have worked with database over 10 TB in size, even more than that. So what are the unique challenges did you faced while managing such type of large databases, and how do you approach them to manage such kind of large data?
Yeah, the most common things for me, I actually changed jobs just to be able to manage a 1.5 terabyte database back in the way back when that was really big. Now
Mhm.
you can, I mean, everyone's learning. They have so much data, and they do. They sit on 20, 26, 30, 50 terabyte databases, and sometimes even gets to petabytes, right? So
Yeah.
the thing I learned, the first thing I learned about a big database is that there gets a point where you don't rely on backups. Sometimes the databases get so big that backing them up is really hard to
Yeah.
do. And so I've learned partitioning. Partitioning was one of the first things I did for larger tables. And mainly that was for management. The biggest challenge about partitions is that the key that you use for partitioning isn't always in the query. So if you don't use the keys in the query, the partitioning keys, you can't use partition elimination. So I learned
Okay.
really quick that partitioning was really for maintenance first, to where I don't have to rebuild the whole entire index, just the ones that fragment. So I could have 50 partitions and one in their months or their quarters, and I could just rebuild that one little or reorg that one little partition. And I say little, even a terabyte partition is better than rebuilding a 26 terabyte index,
Yeah.
because you have space constraints when you start rebuilding,
Yes.
5 terabyte tables, right? You don't have 5 terabytes of RAM. So that's the big thing, is managing the data itself and making sure you can stay fresh and defragmented. The other thing that I learned is that there are techniques you can use to keep that database alive, have it in multiple places. So log shipping or anything you can do to keep it alive, so that if the first one goes down, you can actually get it from the other one, right? Rather than having to restore. So
Mhm.
restoring
Right.
is hard when you want to get up and you have an RTO, a recovery time objective of 5 hours, 4 hours. Restoring a 26 terabyte database in 4 hours may or may not work, right? Especially if you're in the
Right.
cloud or if you're in some place where it has lesser storage. So really it's management of the data and keeping that data available or alive in other places. So a log shipping copy or an availability group is the common one today. Most people that have that large of a database resort to availability groups. So the challenge with those databases
Mhm.
is the size. If you
Right.
rebuild a 2 terabyte table index, your log is going to take a hit, like big
Correct.
hit. So you end up with a really large log. And so in availability groups, you end up clogging that log and you end up with latency. If you read the secondary, you end up with a problem. So yeah, large databases are an art. They are not very sciencey anymore. The science is already there. You have plenty of technology. You don't have to worry about that. But the art of how do I manage this big mammoth that
Yeah.
you just have to figure it out and work with the boundaries. The data is always different. People always use it differently. Then somebody that has a 26 terabyte database could come and talk to you and say, here's how I manage it. And you could go, doesn't apply to me. Okay. I mean, so when you get that large, it's a challenge. You have to work out lots of things that make that database work.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing this very important thing that don't rely on the backups. There should be proper partitioning so that whenever there is any glitch in that, so we should be able to manage the things in a more efficient way. So this is one of the best thing that any developer can do when they are dealing with the large database. And like nowadays, everyone is talking about AI. So how do you see the AI like as a threat or like it is going to help somewhere as it for a DBA profiles?
Yeah, AI is a tool. I don't see it as anything that's going to take away my job. It's not going to do anything special that's going to revolutionize my world. I use it personally for assistance in starting code. So if I'm going to do an automation or something, I ask ChatGPT, what code would you give me for this, or how would
Yeah.
I do this? And so sometimes it's helpful to get a start. I'm not much of a lover of creating things.
Hmm.
I'm better at modifying and making it what I want.
Okay.
The caveat with AI is that everybody thinks that it's always right, and it is not. I did a process once, and I asked it to help me with a cluster thing, and it gave me a commandlet that didn't even exist. It's
Okay.
nowhere. I mean, so you go run the code to test it, and it says, I don't know what that commandlet is. And then you go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, that commandlet's wrong. And it says, oh, yeah, sorry, my bad. And then gives you the proper code. So sometimes you have to massage Copilot or ChatGPT into getting you something that's helpful. But to me, it's really helpful to use it to do some automations or just to get some knowledge. Hey, have you seen this? And have you seen that? But as far as changing my job or making it so that I don't have to work, that's not really a thing. Not in my world, it's not a thing. So maybe it can do some generation of images or code, but it
Yeah.
certainly is not going to take my job. But it's going to be a helper. That's what it's, and that's why I like the name Copilot. It is
Copilot. Yeah.
literally your co-pilot, right? It's just to help you. It's not going to take over your pilot job. It's going to just help you do things faster or give you ideas that you might not have thought about. And it has all the internet to its credit. And so it can help distill some things down. So AI is going to play. It's just not going to take over the world. It's just going to be a very good helper, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, this is what like everyone should think about because whenever we are talking about any tool, so it's better to learn about that and don't fear that it is going to take your job because it is here
Right.
for helping us, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk a bit about the high availability because we all know that high availability is also a topic that is quite critical for so many organizations, and it is one of your key focus area. So can you please break down
Yep.
the both the pros and cons of clustering, availability group, and log shipping for our listeners? Like what are these terms and their pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, clustering, those three, clustering, availability groups, and log shipping are the way to do high availability. You can do a lot of other things, but it will involve log shipping. So Log shipping is probably the oldest one of them because you could do that in SQL 6.0, you could do that in SQL 6.5, 7.0, and stuff like that. So log shipping is probably the longest tried and true thing, and mostly because all you're doing is restoring full diffs and then logs and logs and logs and logs. And you can do that anywhere you want. Disconnected, no, not the same part of domain, in the cloud, not in the cloud. So that one is a really good tool to keep your data up to date somewhere, kind of like a warm standby kind of thing, where you just update it with the recent logs. So that's really helpful. I think that's a great way of high availability. It's not high availability from the perspective of I want to fail over when you're disconnected, right? If you're in the same data center, then you could use that as a high availability. I have it happen for lots of people. The benefit of log shipping is that you can put your database in read-only standby, so it can be readable too. So it's not just sitting there waiting. You can actually have it as a read thing, and then you specify, hey, I want to refresh it every 4 hours, and now you have data that you can read somewhere else, cloud or not, that it's nice and it's available there. And then I can continue to restoring logs because I'm not in recovered mode. I'm in read-only standby, so it still can put the logs in and do things. So that's an easy one for lots of reasons, migrations and all sorts of stuff. The failover clustering and the high availability with availability groups is more involved, right? It just has a lot. So the pros are that you get some really robust high availability. You fail over, and in a matter of 5 to 10 seconds, you're up and running on the next node, and you still have the same entry point. So the connection strings don't have to change, and it's wonderful. So pros is that you have a lot of value in the high availability.
Yeah.
The challenge is that failover clustering requires shared storage. And not everybody has shared storage available, right? Because that means SAN, or that means iSCSI or something, where some people don't have that available. So then you turn to availability groups, and the cons there are that you have more things to manage because you have a log that gets shipped to that thing and then replayed. And that can take a while if you clog it, like with a 10 terabyte database and you rebuild that index, and that log is huge. Sometimes you end up with 3 terabytes of log on a very large database in an availability group. So you better be ready for storage, because that storage is doubled or tripled depending on how many replicas you have. So that's a con of that, is storage and extra compute and other things. But the value of it is that you get super fast high availability, which is the whole point, right? Setting it up is, you can get good at it. I've gotten good at it, but it's a personal thing. If you don't like all that setup, or you don't have the knowledge to troubleshoot it, getting it set up today is super fast with PowerShell. But managing it, that's a whole nother animal, is figuring out how to manage these parts that move and change. And it's not perfect technology yet. Now clustering's pretty close, but availability groups is still pretty new. I mean, we're talking 10 years. That's not, I mean, I guess 12 years, but still, it still has some things that have to be worked out. There's software. They all have bugs. So you figure out how to troubleshoot. So good technology, though. I love it. I love living in that space.
All right. Okay. And now those who don't know, like Ben is not just an expert, he is also an active contributor on platforms like expertexchange.com and SQL Server Central. So Ben, like what drives you to share your knowledge so generously with these kind of community? I know like you just mentioned that learning like contributing for a community is also helping you to learn a lot thing. What other things are there that insist you to contribute for such type of communities, like whether it's expertexchange.com or SQL Server Central?
Yeah. So really only two reasons. One, it's how I began in learning. Learning is really key. And sometimes I don't have experiences that others do, and they'll post their problems in forums. And that's a valuable thing to do, is learn from them. If I can't answer it, I might go play and find out if I can reduplicate, their problem and then fix it. That's one. Number two, I learn from this community, and I just have this drive to give back. If there's somebody out there can learn from what I've went through, and they don't have to go through it. And when they get to that point where they have this problem and they've had their question answered that I've given back to them. I just help more people by having one post and millions of people can read it. So to
Yeah.
me, it's just about giving back, helping people that don't have a resource. Maybe the community is their only resource. And if that's true, then I've at least helped somebody. So that to me, that's valuable.
As a content creator, I can resonate so many things here. But yeah, this is one of the best thing that anyone can do by contributing to the community, because this is the only way through which you can help others as well as you can learn for your own. So this is one of the best thing
Yep.
that you can do. All right, so let's switch gears for a moment. So Ben, like outside of SQL Server and PowerShell, what are some of your hobbies or interests that people might not know about you? So what are those hobbies that you pursue in order to spend your time?
So I like to golf and bowl. I bowl. I do
Mhm.
bowling, and I I used to do a lot of basketball, a lot more active sports, but I had a knee replacement, and that was the end of those sports.
Okay.
But I can still golf and bowl, and so bowling. I actually a little while ago I went and joined a league, and I bowled a 300. So that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. And now they put me in the Hall of Fame back there in some state, I think is Ohio or somewhere. That now I'm on the books as a 300 bowler. It was sanctioned. I got a little ring and a 300 ring, and it was really fun. So my hobbies don't nearly take up as much time as they should now. I should actually be doing more hobbies, but I still do a lot of forums and videos and helping people. So I got to figure out how to switch gears as I approach retirement in the next 10 years or so. I just got to figure out what I'm going to do. But the hobbies are fun. I love the hobbies.
Okay. All right. And we all know that behind every successful person, there is a network of support. So, what do you think? Like, who were the key people who have guided you, inspired you, or supported you throughout your journey?
Yeah, back in the day, when I was at Microsoft in the MVP program, awarding people MVPs, there were several that are key. Some of them are long retired, but they helped me get my start. Right, the people at Microsoft was number one. In the support group, there were some really key people, Dave Whitney and Kevin McDonald, and there was a lot of people that were tirelessly willing to share.
Okay.
And that made my first year at Microsoft just absolute heaven. They knew their stuff inside and out, and they were willing to share everything that they knew. And I learned so fast and so much about resurrecting a dead server, resurrecting a database that would not come online, and how to fix one so that you could get the data out, even though you didn't have a log. I mean, just all sorts of things. So, yeah, there were several people. And then there were the ones in the community, people who were tireless. Aaron Bertrand, Tom Moreau. There's several. I couldn't even name them all because they were all MVPs, and I have a big book because I couldn't remember
Yeah.
them all. But just superstars in willing to share. That's all. Every MVP summit they came to, they were just good friends, and they were people I never met in my life. They came from India, they came from Canada, they came from the UK, and I had never met them personally, only on the forums and only in the news groups. And they were just great people. And they inspired me to be that great. And I loved them. They were who inspired me to do what I do. And I just love it. It's awesome. Great community in the SQL world for sure.
All right. So Ben, like with person like you, there are many things that we can discuss in the podcast, but we have a limited time. So I would like to ask my last question, and it is related to advice. So finally, like if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, a career advice, then what would it be?
The biggest piece of career advice, there's just one. I mean, other than all the things I said before, learning
Yeah.
and stuff like that, contributing, helping, the principle of karma, where you go and give and it comes back to you. The
Yeah.
biggest piece of advice that I that I would do differently is I
Mhm.
would set boundaries for a work-life balance. That's what I do. That's the
Okay.
biggest advice. Work really hard when you're working, but take a break. let your mind rest, spend time with your loved ones, wife, kids, family, sisters, brothers, whatever. But take time away on a regular cadence so that you can have a good work-life balance. Microsoft hammered that into the heads of people. And I tried, and I did better while I was at Microsoft. Once I left Microsoft, I worked all the time. But that's the biggest piece of advice I'd give is just take a breath. Just go and do something fun, get away. Don't work all the time. It is hard to get out of the habit. It's a habit, and you have to build a different habit to get away. Yep. That's my biggest piece of advice.
All right. Okay, so thank you so much, Ben, for joining us in this episode and for sharing so much information and sharing your expertise with us. I hope it was a enjoyable discussion for you as well. So thank you once again for being a part of the show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.